能道公求多做长我一切叫做世界人果，超波决定所能能给我，公布求你求来相子，千秋颠簸之面到月有，心多找我求来相子，列着见着西波所梦见，两面全见求来相子。广播突厥节电波，当前前辈电波，色能原电叫做些，电线线来相子，旁边的桥着我就月月跟送列追，基督的当求救波，先就就来相子，这天这月朗阳的老婆到了少得。先给当报一点点，给的老样相称，别把这样那家亲，给我别说做吧。让给三年用素的，天天上街天波，干嘛让人忙面东，就忙死我就不，面老路到真道不，都是就能得到，三能的也同起在波也，过碰到年就着的。挂到那当前面老周，随便做点着我哟。
Must have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Sharadvati Putra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate buddhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the word of the Blessed One.
Lama Zong Gongbo Jizen Jianbei Yang La Shang Cai Lo Kang Yue Lo Zhu Zhen Yin Zhen Zhen Jin Da Nang Da Rao Se Wei Jue Nian Dun Gen Ji Jin Zi Xie Jin Jie Du Ga Le Ba Zin Gang Da Si Bi Zhen Ra Ma Ri Mi Dong Dong Gen Jue Zi Wei 若作愿了不见大自因了主角要的颂，周到接着年末年落的节家住这最近，马里面些东年就过今年全在这着呢。 这年大节撒节大自有的就是都有过。 就着就当就年接着到里面，将别养了的阿拉巴扎那的，阿拉巴扎那的，阿拉巴扎那的，这点去就见了日子。 老人的我明白少些年，高档的就用了多把烟，落着不别弄，这多路所谓是就一些也没有也多，找也人。 过松多觉无着自多所，变作给了些人准备过，大愿卓越这话公约所，马里写下节俭随便多，下节做我的那所我的。 多觉千佛地系多觉常，觉在德罗波多那罗波，别就着别波多阿地想，鸟来心罗觉罗娑瓦地，下波多灭眼界当着地。确的地狱的当着别别，세상故乡乐年所连望，了解识别觉了所望的，遥远月面兄弟乐着呢，那我这把这边可就见。三界国中宝宝有三所，上蒙大月觉了所望的。协助当别中阿地上，高当点别面部中端节，念就当接过去送罗嗦，高当拉玛那罗娑瓦的，刚见心地世界中国我，我到这边我修接受的。当我点别道不开着见，要是就把接了说完的，叫做过的老马多坚强，刚了刚的些年去做呢，就当对我着自在边。只见老马那老说完的。让将所罗跟了大爷们，给上他把这边就我就，在月这边他给这把爷，站在先前那老说完的，叫我跟到要到那么那。这边就这边了，那些钱，撒到那就有点少做的，多就讲给个人多说，三节就当做节就那那，想就把多到年就做节，大概节别做那节。到了偏些上界诸不修上界就做界就能了上就不多的年就做大概界别做那界到了偏些上界诸不修上界就当做界就能了上就不多的年就做界大概这别做那些，到了这些上界如不有。哎呀，这是个我讲的，当俺这点了开始啥，当俺这去就是的打绿的刚写的三小娃节了，新就去这里，去是的小娃节头知道吧？那小娃节头是的小娃是的，那让你小娃节吧的，见小娃节吧。到三小娃这边见呢，那六小娃用过是啥呢？那双节多啊，而且两个切小的，那新就去是的，那小娃节的了哇，小娃是的。
So, Shiji, which means we're here to practice Dharma, right? So, what is meant by practicing Dharma? So, practicing Dharma is all about pacifying self and others. And when it comes to the pacification or the pacifying, so pacification and pacifying here really refers to one's own mind. And it is through the pacification of one's own mind, one can pacify one's body as well. And not only that, pacify oneself, it is through, by means of pacifying oneself, one can also pacify others as well.
주변성이 주변성 세나리 대바치쇼 간데 지에는 추이나 다 랑기 센데 쇼와 제거바데 추지기 아니 다 친세거로 제비 거바티체 아니 델레 대바치베 쳐대네 랑다 제 연수도바 쇼와 세대다 쇼 저와시마 연수도바를 신지 추어세디 추이기 거대도에데 니 쇼와 인자네네 맞아 거스 봐봐 아니 랑신 이제 센데 세나리 다다랑 세나리 아니 센쇼와 용도 지나
So whether one is engaging in practice of Mahayana or the Hinayana or the lower vehicles, whichever the vehicle that we may follow, but a common practice, the result of the practice, whichever the vehicle that one may follow, the result of the practice must be pacifying one's mind or the subduing one's mind, bringing up a subjugation of one's mind. This is the common practice for both practitioner of the Mahayana and Hinayana. Particularly when it comes to the Mahayana practitioners, it is not only the pacifying one's own self, but also pacifying that of other sentient beings.
주기에는 탑 시바진 세고를 다시 주기 최단비 네 장기 제타와진데 지 네 젠나 제타와진데 때는데 네 더버 투병 뭐지 내가 저기 딱 얘기했었는데 라마세나데 네 그런 소제 안텔레 마 주름바테네 네 라이지베 라마 라소바기 네 거든게 지랑게 면선이 되잖아 거텔라 미바체.
So this is the teachings, the very skillful teachings that we are receiving, which is given by the Buddha himself. Buddha, he actually, actualized all those spiritual realizations. It is through his own experience. He propounds those teachings to other followers based on his own experiences. So it is therefore, at this point, let's take an opportunity to visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in front of, before oneself, surrounded by all other, lineage gurus, the Lamrim lineage gurus.
아니 다라다 라냐기 세워데 게세데 디징에 라도나이 아니 단지지 시와데 그게 전전이었잖아요. 근데 라다 더바지 송이 네 녀파도 그게지 쉬위 최되니 아니 주이셴바세나레 다 주마셰세나레 다 간제 된지게 냥타바절레 미네 아니 지 니지 유행이 근데 더게잖아요. 선전을 미비 진제당 여와를 미비 대바 대니기 손들을 대해서 미나 책인다.
So then, having visualized those, Buddhas and surrounded by all these lineage gurus of Lamrim Chamu, and then in their presence, imagining that yourself in being in their presence, surrounded by all sentient beings, without exception. So with this, try one's best to cultivate an irreversible faith to the great beings and cultivate a compassion and extend your compassion equally towards all other sentient beings. With these cultivations, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate.
당아 속에 들으게 끊어 치바지는 가르치고 그래서나 단지 센치바 타바나기래 아니 장시 선제 단지라 시원 주고에나 시위 최대라니로 그거에 yana ante wana kanju jugore inte duye to yere yemane se de jwa tomoro mena college dujoro.
So then, with these motivations, what we are doing here is, as we mentioned earlier, we're here to engage in the practice of Dharma, which bring forth the pacification of one's own mind and the pacification of that of other sentient beings. It is for this purpose we're engaging in this spirit Dharma practice. So now, how do we actually achieve such pacification? How do we really pacified state of mind? How do we do that? Is there any means or the skillful means or the methods which actually pacifies our mind? Is it possible for us to actually achieve such methods? If there's no any possibility of pacifying one's mind, then following practice is pointless, isn't it?
Tama soge ngara soge debata keche shenge jena da mune shinju jenge jena tende dewa senge de duye tende yosamare sege cha gare sanenge ta ngi se de icheba keche shewa ina tomama cheba ne zone tanda ba soso jibo jena sanne kale bezen ta ha ja shayinda ne ranja ne de ma do tube yuma keke me do tanda loyi nebo de zubi nebo jena dur me do me do ye me do sanne pe de ta je go me so jire soso ma soge ngasi le sana.
So now, if we look at ourselves at the present situations, the way we engage our activities, our day-to-day activities, it's almost that is impossible for us to achieve such, pacifications, because whenever we engage in any activities, we're not engaging in activities that bring forth pacification of one's own mind and that of other beings. So, right from the beginningless time up until now, we have remained in the same situation under the domination of this, afflictions and our negative deeds, our karma, which derived by our negative deeds and so forth. So if you still remain in such a way, it is almost impossible for us to achieve this spiritual achievements. So, why we haven't been able to achieve our goal that we always seek to achieve, which is the achievement referring to the pacification of one's mind. In other words, happiness. Why do we haven't been able to achieve this happiness that we always seek? It is because that we haven't been able to see how things really are. We actually need to change our outlook towards the world, the way we understand the world. And the way we have not having a proper understanding of the world and always remaining ourselves under the control of self-grasping and self-cherishing mind. It is therefore we are not been able to achieve and what we long to achieve.
Ana trilina tanga soye ane soso trilje no duwe da me shibe wage ina ta kare che bore se sona ane rangi tani ngeso rangi chetawaji shenla shije maloba tembe ani tenge ye chige ni chila ni temba senare gegente ani gegente ye kanso ba teni nyasa le go yensa ne ni nosa teni chogoro chotande chosa de gegente ne chotmato chota jemewa yensa ne tanga chogi gegente ne temba toma temba tube ambore ani teye nyasa le sonshange de ani bado ani jaga ye penju tsange ani nyane chebe tone ani ten 아니 데레타 배 관계적인 로벤 손제지네 안땡라 배상이 아니 종종 들지라 가지고 거서 봐봐 아니 냐네 제기 아니 소소 만져려마도 제토의 차진 차소 영역이 아니 가서 거서 봐도요.
So now, so then, if this is the case, and how do we realize? How do we gain the realization of the understanding of how things really are? In other words, what is the mode of existence of things and event? What kind of skillfulness that requires for one to have such realizations? When we have such questions, then relying upon authentic teachers coming into picture, right? So here then, think about the teacher to whom we relied at this point. It is the instruction that we are receiving from the teacher is unbroken lineage, beginning from the Buddha and Buddha to his followers and great Indian masters, and all the way to the Tibetan, the masters, or the Tibetan great Tibetan Buddhist scholars. So now we have all those immaculate teachings that in front of ourselves. It is up to us whether we really put an effort to take the initiative of engaging in those practice and bringing about change within one's mind and one's continuum.
다 되게 유튜브 담바 선지 매쳐바지 페레당 페바레서 로지 zanji 마이바 대다기 손 젬바제예요. 다손 젬바제예요 봐마서 다나 가서 거서 봐봐. 지다 정원을 뭐 전에 지나. 다 저런저기 상주선데 돈이도 별로니 냥선래다. 아니 대지 대용고도 텔레치마도 동해제는 메도. 아니 라바도 가서 로아 메이리스네리 소차 스리지나 rangi nyeji mato yawa shengi je mundu sengi ani ngaro rang tada yongu sengi namachi tada ngos je ani ta dewa tene dugo du tele chi ma do nge je mundu da songi ngos namachi nga son je ko bodio.
So now, when speaking about the great spiritual masters of the past, we may not be able to have an opportunity to see such great masters at this point. Nevertheless, we are having such a wonderful opportunity to see to learn and to study their teachings, the teachings that are given by them, the immaculate teachings given by those great masters. Think about now. Let's take a perfect examples of the great teachers of our time is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He always emphasizes and encourages the followers, the Dharma practitioners particularly, to engage in the practice of generation of bodhicitta and wisdom realizing emptiness. So if one is able to if one is able to, engage in such practice in our day-to-day life, then everything that appears to us, particularly the sentient beings, down to the insects, animals, regardless of who they are, there's not a single sentient being who is not dear to oneself. And this is the mental capacity that we will be able to achieve by ourselves. We have such a precious mental capacity within us, and we need to recognize that and try to develop such mental attitudes. And this, His Holiness, is the one we always can have the teachings, the direct teachings from him, and who can be the right example of the great past great beings.
되지. 다 되게 내 손에 상추기 생다 돈이 또 별로니라 고아제제 멤버십의 멤버십 때서 여러 제와이나 라니라. 아니 되게 제법이 저와 대고는 고아투 그래. 아니 제가 송이 저와다 니가 되는 것도 그래.
So with this, if one is able to then think about how the authenticity of the teachings that are given by the great teachers will then covers the first outlines, the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as a noble source. And then also will shows, which will then when thinking about how wonderful the teachings they are given, the authenticity of the teachings that we are having that we are actually having opportunity to engage in such practice of the instructions given by those great beings, which actually covers the second outlines of showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings.
라바도 단나가서 사제송바 아니 예시 제타샤와 생긴데 상추센데 돈여도 별로니 영역이 강사 지인소나 차기 계기 드릭마로 인샤샤로.
So then here, particularly when you look at the third outlines, which are how to listen to the teachings, which both teachings and its authors are great. Well, it actually barely talks about, the actual, contents of the teachings, which is the teachings of emptiness and wisdom realizing emptiness and bodhicitta.
되지. 다 남방가지 하나만 제다 저이름 발라 자이사지 니체. 맨 나지 자와 신년 대비 최단 대내로 지다 장이름 니체. 대송샤로지.
So then this will then be followed by the two other important outlines. Those are how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of our spiritual path, and how the students then train their minds after having relied on the authentic teachers.
단지게 가는 사치 때는 저시 저야 되는소나 배제 지 랑rin 요소 줘봐대 지 뭐네 라파기 줘나게 지토에 지지래 다 강저는 또바랑지를 제세에 거야 무슨란에 두고에 지르면서 고아 코너 개치시에서나 사치 코너에 도는 요소 줘봐대 지토에 소리지래.
So the outlines that we have mentioned earlier, the above outlines, if one is able to reflect one's mind upon those outlines very carefully, by reflecting upon those outlines, you'll be able to see the contents, entire contents of the Lamrim within the palm of one's hand. It is up to the individual whether we have certain realization of the Lamrim Jemo, but so long as you're able to reflect very carefully on those outlines, you'll be able to actually have those contents of this Lamrim contents within the palm of one's hand.
라바도 된게 다 되니게 수된 민된데 준비토나라 돈여도 별로다 상추선나 고아치 행해지에서나 딱 맞지 잠블리 대장원에 잠블리게 끼리시에서는 지레 용용수 좀 노한 가르치에서는 제게 가르쳐서나 아니 뒤거는 버투에지지 라니게 좀 잠블리 끼시에서는 지레.
So this, whatever the teachings that we find in the Lamrim, it actually gives the teachings on the emptiness and the importance of, cultivating wisdom realizing emptiness and generation of bodhicittas. This is the universal teachings of the Mahayanan universal teachings, because whether we are engaging in practice of Sutrayana or the Bodhisattvayana, or whether we are engaging in the practice of the Tantrayana, all of those practice must be converge on these two practices, two fundamental practices of wisdom realizing emptiness and generation bodhicitta.
되지. 다 때는 로체다 장이 발라니. 뒤에 때는 님볼님 비시 그거다 님버 전달님 비치니 다 도모제사. 다 님버 전달님 비치들라니. 랑지 나자다 님버 지세다 님볼님 뭐지. 다 도모제사. 다 님볼님 생각들라서 주변 중에다 되면 나제르만 야설는지 주변 제다 되면 나제르만 야설는지 주변 챔피언 나제르만 야설는지 다 동본이 돼서 주변 챔피언 나제르만 야설는지 송 대전은 주변 거다 세제 코나된 바 세대 제다 집에 세제는 쇼발로 로츠에제 다 동본이 돼서 세제는 쇼발로 로츠되는 송 세제는 로발로 로그비 제세 로발로 레발로 로베 산제면 주가 된바 로발로 로베 반니시에 바지 다 동본이 돼서 다 로발로 로베 반니시에 바달라 니 대바체 뭐 쩔어서 제바도 도제 대바로 넣어야지. 다 동bol라서 상세지 라발라 런데장와 장내 제세제 담바송 손에 제단에 비추 다 동본인지사 손에 제단에 비추되라 손 갈라로 비제 델 하바는 뒤시 델라로 비린 바지 다 동본인지사 델라로 비린 바 델라로 비린 바달니 쇼바cel라로 제다 제바도 파제 타마니라로 지지 다 동bol라니 이제 랑게 상제지 주변바시고 바로 드시 말하지 나 이제 주변바는 뒤에 공부잖아 하지예지 다 동bol라 주 임발라로지 추진라로지 저발라로지 상된 저리라로지 상된라로지 싫어로 하지예지 다 뒤에 너게 도망가서 파시 동bol이라로지데 타네 파시 송바 네 제비 파시라로지 제세제 넘버 손에 파르드 심바 둘라 허고비 노게 아니 가서게 다다코스 봐봐 아니 제비 파시라로지데라 데데레스 사지.
So we are on the particular on the particular chapter of how to train in the perfections of patience out of 6 perfections.
다 되노이 가서 가서 되게 될 때 카투로게 다 가서 때 현주기 치듯이 로로지다 되게 되어 강시 된데创作나 되는 데단 젠도 데시바데 단지 가서 가대 이게 저라마서 가서 때 야테스로네 되게 동로지 현주기 치듯
가시 됨데 초점 배승이 들어와요.
가시 된데创作 되는 데다 젠도 데시.
Awesome. So let's go back a little bit under this paragraphs. It's 154. It's a furthermore where it says the end of the paragraph, the first paragraph where it says, the furthermore engaging in the bodhisattva state states, whoever works hard and overcome anger is happy in this and future lives.
시송바 다 지티모로위 당에 되게 레시비스 저우는 치대 전부 쉬지도 저바 젠데도 때나네 이제 가와 메냐웨 셋데다 셋데양사 뒤통제도 데라 심마 년로 고지 년도 치바제다 타 년레 때에 대식균도 되오서 대달라 수비 저비 페나 저발레심이 진짜진 제발랑 예바 슈자라 템바 많이 제바도 감바 샤오 손데르라자.
So explanation is it's very clear explanation that we find after that, following this, 2 lines of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Rule of Life, where it says, when you rely on patience continually, you do not spoil your joyful attitude. So you're always happy, even in this life. Moreover, patience stops miserable rebirth in future lives, gives special rebirth in happy realms, and ultimately bestow a certain goodness. So you're utterly happy in this and future lives. Meditate on these benefits until you gain a strong, firm certainty about the cause and effect relationship, wherein such benefit as this arises from patience.
되지. 되지 쇼지베 가서기 나로쪽에 라네토고에 대라레다. 가지 가서데 코 녀모도서 생활도 저데 제다 잡히게지 카데나 치셔 바로. 예전에 되게 거라 강시 드인도 좀 깔래 전에 contract member so to na ani ran shibare jen shibare de shibare shima shibare ta niele taba tanji chima ta son do.
So this is what we should be doing, you know. The practice that we should be adopted. This practice should be adopted by ourselves. You know, whoever works hard and overcome anger is happy in this and the future life. Think about that, because you know, whenever we are, you know, we become enriched for some reasons due to the agitations or and then so forth, and then at the very moment that you know that that you are actually remaining under the sway of negative thoughts and emotions, particularly of the anger, then you think about this. And this is the perfect practice to cultivate, you know, to serve as a remedy towards our negative thoughts of anger and so on.
다 가서 쉐거에 내가 치셔 쉐거 가서 강기 진 깔레 전에 콘트라트 까 그랬어요. 유디 지 다가서 제제 마체베 걸어 아니 가서 가서 지 데디시데디 쳬베주 쟁에 토르 버데 타임 파스에 되잖아. 저거 도쇼 차로 그러. 다시 토메지 친체라 샤비기 카테자토에나 근데 자식이 그 대워지래요 그러.
So here now, when speaking about which means stopping anger, is when there is a conditions arises, when there is a condition, when there is a cause which give rise to anger, that is the point that you should stop the anger. You know, when someone who is not happy, I mean, when nothing is happening to us, that doesn't make much sense to engage in the practice of patience or stopping anger. Just as we find in the text where sometimes it says, when nothing happens to oneself and one acts as a spiritual practitioners, when something happens or some calamities happen to oneself, then one will turn into a really ordinary person. So this shouldn't be for us as a practitioners. It is whenever those negative thoughts and emotions arises in one's continuum, one must pinpoint, one must actually identify it and recognize that, and then apply attitude towards that.
저바 감발라 때네 쇼이 편대야 진짜와라 녀바니에 그 소유디 대지 출루지게 따주지 개체 많이 봐. 이 무빈네스도 튀비도네. 대마도 조사명이 질 녀바니에 그 소도아.
So here it says now, you know, it's a meditate on benefits, you know, until you gain the strong, firm certainty about the cause and effect relationship, wherein benefits such as this arises from patience. Now, if you look at this, you know, passage, it clearly, you know, mentions that practicing patience is nothing to do with religious practice. It requires for every one of us, whether you are a believer or non-believer.
네 시슈절 때보 많이 집어도 아니 미바 양생한테 전에 공리 대셔 송도아 내가 가서 하자래다 가서 그때 가서는 마서도 배롱수 지네 되더라 가서 이제 시토메지 로서요 말이 농가 지 로서요 말이 배 가서는 차도 쳐보 수지네 되더라 추보 수지.
So here now it says meditate on this, you know, I'll read once again here. It's a very good advice, which is meditate on these benefits until you gain strong, firm certainty about the cause and effect relationship, wherein benefits such as this arises from patience. So this is very, very, you know, good advice that we find in this Lamrim Chamu, because most of the time we cannot even take a one word. If someone uses a word that is unpleasant to oneself, you immediately change your mental attitude. In other words, the negative attitudes, and charge that person and think of retaliating what he or she has said. And it is just but when one word that we are unable to take, let alone that when someone really, you know, inflict harm upon us. even one word, one unpleasant word is expressed by someone towards yourself, one becomes so unbearable, right?
对些，对这眼老有啊，去chung说了个的呢，去年我上班了，说过的这呢，去许下个的是，你说说远远的把了不加，你常常呢，说说了，在偏个都上也最等的汤说呢，你去没去课，点了控制点。
So whenever you find, and I always encourage that to all of you, whenever you find a verse or some, passage or the verses or the paragraph that's something that is really effective to oneself, something that you think is really practical to oneself, then you take that and you just write it down or put it somewhere where you can see that, easily. You don't have to look in a book, because this is how, it will really help. It will really help us by choosing the right word and effective words, so that if you keep seeing those words and try to familiarize this word and accustom your mind in accordance with that words. So this is very, very helpful.
对些，到控制你们特别多呢，你嘴巴嘛讲呢，你说说了穷开始这个的是老阿姨呢，出于你们啦，送对的。
So then, what is the disadvantages of not applying an antidote towards anger?
他马通比你们的通比你们是，但我说我不经常说过去的写个嘛的话，人家那马通比你们开的有的是送完呢，你马通比你们呢送多。
So therefore, it says now, with respect to the faults of anger, the invisible faults are as follows.
这些马通比你们的选举嘞，给把东的啥把人的这些缺了说。那些可以得到跟工作机跟中把写接送吧带送。
So therefore it says, engaging in the Bodhisattva state states, any good deeds such as generosity, worshipping the squatters, you have collected over 1,000 yuans, are all destroyed in one moment of anger.
接送吧带，那老人听到这马上去把来的，但呢怕八月这把接到我先选举的个吧，他们说的，这边那边人多了呢，说的。
So here,
那个没有把路上就是。
last one.
这边那边人多了，给把加萨比给完就把送了。就怕样，给把假设比人把的出人就怕现了，恐怕下边给我能控制上把给几张些这边讲就把送说。
So then here it says, Aryasura formulated this exactly as it is presented in engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. The play of Manjushri Sutra, Manjushri Vigradita Sutra mentions the destruction of the virtue accumulated over 100 eons, and also Chandrakriti commentary on the middle way says that the virtue accumulated over 100 eons of conditioning to the perfection of generosity and ethical discipline is destroyed, even by the generation of just one momentary anger thoughts.
到控制给几嘛季节呢？你给把弄的啥被给咱中国似的，你控制啥是有的说的是老阿姨拿送的。
So now he talks about when we say that that's a one moment of anger, the generation of anger can destroy the virtue that you have accumulated for 100 eons. And this particular anger, now here, to whom the object of the anger, will be described later. But now we will be describing who will be to whom that you generate such anger will actually destroy the 100 eons accumulated merits by one declaration of anger.
네. 다 된저기 콘트라스에 이때 쓰리라와이나 이 진짜와실로 초고반네 같이 상생 고바 칠라 같이 이줄라시 하마네 조발에 강시 제세는 초보이 진다 천주 교와 교바자 서버 계지 견종 시송바다 팀바 당어서.
So then here it says concerning who or what the recipients of such destructive angers must be. Some say that it must be bodhisattvas, while others assert that it's the recipient in general. The former accords with the statement in the commentary on the middle way. Therefore, a movement angered towards conquers shall destroys the virtue arising from generosity and ethical discipline accumulated over 100 eons.
되지. 또 되게 가서 받는 나오자고서는 다 간제 오만 주받는 소상이 되게 이제 사바 계지 견조 되게 실생이 있어야 돼. 아니 컨트롤사사게 유대라 아니 상추선바 거래에서네 손바레스 대타지선.
So here in the commentary on the middle way is what it says is therefore movement anger towards conquers child. It's very clear, right? By the Chandrakriti way, it says that by the recipients of such destructive anger must be someone must be the conqueror's child, referring to the bodhisattvas.
다 같이게 이줄람이 버와 다 단다 이줄람이나 다랑 요거를 성의 지당 아니 컨트롤사스게들 상주선바 거래 생이 예전에 아니 동보대 아니 오만 주바이대 아니 상주선바 거 생이 되지 아니 니바대 이 간대질라서야 돼 이제는 책도.
So then there is such the one asserts that it says the some says it must be the bodhisattvas, while others assert that it is recipient in general, not particularly the bodhisattvas. Recipients in the recipients in general, what it says. So the recipient of the bodhisattvas is actually, which asserted the former one is asserted in accordance with the commentary on the middle way by Chandrakriti.
되지. 다 컨트롤 집이 때네 다 가서 변한 하러지 컨트롤 상에나 다 다지 오만 주바기 대 상생 남편체로 지금 먼저 제로 그래. 봐. 전에 메바제 다 댄스르지 컨트롤 사비 때라 상에 대 상주선바 이나지 미나지 마스 스르지나 지난데 지거로. 다 코로나를 막고 먼저들이 지제도 컨트롤 집이 때네 손도 상생 저传나 계산조나 상생 많이 비 상생을传나 다 주면번 중절에 송신 손도 이때 상생 알로 송신 손도 알레티바도 지다 년생이 지조를 소리 지는도 이때 상생 예망에 당 초이 진세 통만도 지는 하시바다 교환 정보는 는 저와 송소 손도 지버더래샤 로샤나지 메게바.
So with respect to the person who gets angry, Chandrakriti's explanation of the middle way commentary says that if anger even by bodhisattvas destroys their roots of virtue, it goes without saying that the anger of non-bodhisattvas towards bodhisattvas does, regardless of whether the recipients of the anger is ascertained to be a bodhisattva, or whether the recipients, whether the perceived faults that cause the anger are real, and the destruction of the virtue is said nonetheless to be just as explained above. The virtue accumulated over 100 eons is lost.
나서기 가르타지 얼산나 되더라. 더 오만 주바기 단지 사바 계지 견도 대이 시생에 계지질은 정어서데 상생 남편스 임바 소여나 상추 선바 땡제지기 상추 선바 땡제지로 카도네 계지질을 계자 든저 사바든 정어여나 상추 선바 많이 버지기 상추 선바라 컨트로사나다 히에모거 바로 와스 지타지.
So then it's clearly mentioned there. It says, it says that if anger, even by the bodhisattvas, destroy their roots of virtue, it goes without saying that the anger of non-bodhisattvas towards bodhisattvas does.
상질은 양들이 쳐봐요래. 근데 상세 또바 토하기 매바지 토할잖아. 양 대랭이 받쳐 사야다. 제일라는 다와 사야다. 아니 충원세야 돼. 같이 들이 쳐봐다. 처음부터 간사 때 쳐봐지. 다와나 가족이 델해버어. 아니 가족이 들이 간사 가야로 줄 카도나. 내 상주 선바 인바데 해고거래서는 해고고 말이 변을 상주 선바 인나. 아니 상주 선바지 해바데 상주 선바라 카도마다 통바 상주 선바 카도마다 So now
here, if one generates anger towards the individual, whether the individual is bodhisattvas or not, it is, what kind of result that we may experience by generating anger towards someone who is bodhisattva or not. And is it necessary that we need to know someone as a bodhisattva? So it says, not necessarily, you don't have to know that individual is bodhisattvas. Without knowing that individual is bodhisattvas, so long as that individual is bodhisattvas, if you generate a movement of anger, will destroys your root of virtue.
When the Shanchu Samba Godan Hakomasu said, and so Rashiji, Logi dinner, Kilon, maybe to the same dinner, the angel to Godanga Hashima said, and there you would any Shanchu Samba in Japan, but the children of Chastigre, the Chiba your cigarette. Now, Contra Saji Bengal, Sutu Ramada Lobatan, teaching Loban in Chapa Tessiore, teaching also Godanga Contra San and get the low shows said, and there you cigarette. In I So
here now, the intensity of the result that one may experience, it depends on whether you have carried out, the three actions. In the beginning, which is the motivations of saying something bad about others, and then we are actually saying it without any hesitations, and you are satisfied having said something bad about others. And this is what we call carried out three cycles. All three, cycles are, fulfilled, which will have, you will have the result will be more intense. Intense result will be experienced by the individual. However, if one is not carried out, if one is not fulfilled those three cycles or the three steps, then your intensity of, the result will be less intense. So that's the difference, because if, for instance, if you have said something bad to others and immediately that you realize I shouldn't have said that, and you have a regret, and in fact, you just approach that individual and then you're just saying, oh, whatever I said, I'll take it away. I'll take it by myself, and I'm sorry about that. If you just apologize to the person, then that the result will be, less intense.
However,
in the Lamrim Chama, it doesn't seem like, once you have actually, generated anger, out of anger, you may have said something bad to others, and you will always have the consequences.
지를 매대 되어서 대나기 주부 당부대 가야 하고 말에 아니 센서버 샤쇼소네 내대전 쇼로자 나와
So,
이제 대인지로
so it is therefore the Dharmakriti emphasized very strongly, being very careful when we say something bad about others, because we do not know whether that individual to whom you are actually expressing the unpleasant words towards, maybe the person is bodhisattva or not. We do not know that. It is just like a concealed the amber, under the thick ashes, without knowing that there's an amber underneath the thick ashes. If you step onto it, so it's a very dangerous. It may take your life. Similarly, we do not know who is bodhisattvas, not bodhisattvas. So you have to be very careful, prior to you actually engage in those negative deeds of body, speech, and mind with regard to the individual.
대체 라바드 사제경 근데 나도 만져 강사 수zo 맞아도 양보 제다를 소야돼서 먼저한테 컨트롤이 님이래 아니 강사 될 때비 뒤바 답신 사샤와 인자네 뒤이차네 근데 하잖아요 돼 배 내가 처음에도 말아서 뒤 진되네 소소 고소나 다보전에 멀리 신주 먼저 자라니는 신주 제도 거야 뒤가는 깽이 때서 채나야 될 돈에 제 먹업에 돈에 시유 돈에 간데 더 개발되는 요구도 야나 달하제 저돈에 둘이 마도나 요구도에 세지 로 피 가사들 자체진은 메저와제 소소 요도 소소 상바도 시와데 투에 될 배자적으로 빼게 저버려도.
So it is very important, we have to be, handle our anger. And whenever one is in a situation of expressing some bad words towards others, so we have to be very careful with that. Just as Buddha has stated that, I may, just among the ordinary beings, you may not know who they are and what they are, what kind of realization such and such they have. We will not be able to understand each other in terms of their realizations. So without knowing that, if you say something bad about that person, or if you just a one moment of generation of anger would actually, individual will need to pay a very heavy consequences of what you have done to them. So therefore, we have to be very careful. So when you see yourself in a situation where it may become a bad situation, you may think that you are in a bad situation. If it is possible, that you should try to ignore that. If it is possible that you can again, bring about a change of the situation through your advice, or if you think, but it is important that you have to really know that appropriateness of time and right time must understood by oneself when it comes to giving advice to others and bringing about the change of the situation.
내가 저기 인지민지 이 자신부지로 컨트롤사고에서 먼저 전에 집어 말해. 아니 소소기 빼는지 나에게 치대 심이 진짜래. 양속이 잘라 진짜라. 노노네. 소소기 개자 주줘야 소소 빼디 집어 명에서야. 그래서 가는 거 컨트롤님이로.
So not only that the negative consequences that we may have by generating anger towards bodhisattvas or the sublime beings, but even one generates anger towards one's own family member, even to one's pets, such as cat and dog. And this has an immediate impact upon us, which destroys your peace of mind. At the moment that you generate anger, it destroys your peace of mind. And then not only that, but this will destroy your virtue.
This is 반사적 coming true.
10 minutes break.
대령 가서 자고이 타마대로 와. Okay.
Nima, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I always do that. 근데
아니 뭐 데려가서 타마대로 와.
너무 rum치 담으래.
타마인데 다 커서 좋아하는데 지연은 다 매는 게 많았어.
나도 rum치 단디 인나가 베기한데 근데 제림디 세상 소샤비는 근데 요소 rum치 컨디션.
그래. 다 소셜로 지금 다 개념만 메시게 매와이나 다 단다 실로를 줘야 되는데 와. 소셜로 지나
I asked Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said you can go ahead and send the schedule. So Rinpoche is fine. The next month's schedule. So if you have any questions, so I think today is last week of the month. So we'll get some questions.
I could ask a question just from what we just went over. I think I have a hard time understanding how a moment of anger can lead to destruction of virtue accumulated for over 100 eons. So one, does that apply to every moment of anger? And two, so it would be cumulative. And two, I guess I don't understand how anyone could become a Buddha if it's just going to be this endless cycle. How?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Then the control and the KG control again. Give gay so sure.
Get on your sana.
Yes, I did it. Chumgo was what I think. Containers, the KG control and the Chomena, the Bejan in the chick, Simjan Sanja singing the message solution.
Control gets a KG control Gaba Jasabi gets a Johor City gets a 10 Meboso Ketchimari, not Chubachiro. Benako, Ben the second chiller dig motor than Joseph House and Johor is a Lachiro. Ben a motor Joseph Ketchina, Kamachilo, Cotaricil and Joseph and Johor is a Soba de Remado, did it so the corner better Mebo House Ketchimare, Yichibachina Trusoina.
So here now, here the first thing is that the destruction of one's virtue, the root virtue, is not something that uprooting your entire virtue. That's not what it means. It destroys the virtue that you have accumulated for 100 years, but that doesn't mean that it uproots the virtue. That's not what it means.
How about the tension to some of the ten command Chosona? Tang was only the Keba Jasabi Gyo Jongor said that G. Inchimichi Chankajabi catches in Mare. So about the Richie in Olola, the Richie in your Chagre said that the Jacha Jayongore. The Yona call Ben Shanchu Sambachi la Bena Getsagi Monyon, the Chankaji share in the Ketcher Thomas on the Sosa said Ketcheroa.
So here now, when speaking about the destruction of the virtue that accumulated for 100 eons, there is a one portion of the virtue that we are talking about here. Well, here now, when we speak about the merits that the Bodhisattva was accumulated, it talks about countless great eons. So there are some other virtues that actually exist. We are just approximating. It's just an approximation of the amount of that virtue that can be destroyed by means of generating a movement of anger. Which that doesn't mean that it actually wiped out your entire virtue. That is what it means.
아빠 된도를 변에 뒤설을 되나 변에 상추 선바 다스 지 변에 다 총란에 정말 취소 선바도 버질이야 펀로고여서나 아니 된저기 컨트롤님이 지사벌을 되네 니 취소 된바 제범도 총란에 펀메도 되기 된저기 지초特别 사바사게 된저기 상추 선바 남편들을 되는 거래
Even amongst the bodhisattvas, talking about the bodhisattvas who were on the bodhisattvas on the path of accumulations, and such bodhisattvas who is about to, advance his realizations from path of accumulation to path of preparations, supposedly, advancing to the path of preparation next moment. However, at some point, or to some, suddenly the bodhisattvas have actually generated angers towards other bodhisattvas, then this will actually take a longer period of time for the bodhisattvas who was on the on the path of accumulations will take longer times, much more longer time to advance his or her path, to the path of preparations. It will actually slow his or her advancement of the spiritual path.
nga sonde chile pe sha ya na pe nyen ka ha le nyen ka chmo na ba nga sonde so su jo le ton bo de thame ba de so na ge so pe na nga cho de le gyo sing de shin kha yo lo do de ji ba le shin ki lo do shin kha no le jong ho se se che so ya na yang ji chang lu du jia yong wa da de ge to ne jian jian na de bu ho se se yong to xian de na ka bu do ye na yin ye ma zu ge ji ge yi za wa de yang kong zhuo de 你们说是希望的着呢，你给予老多的节目都谈到把那的不干的给点了。
So it is, very possibility for us to have some kind of condition that actually destroys our roots of virtue. When speaking about the roots of virtue, the virtue, it is just like a corpse in the field. So if you have abundant corpse in the field, but we do not know whether you will be able to actually utilize those fields, the corpse that is in the field. Because at some point, suddenly when there's a hailstorm, then it will destroy entire corpse. Then you'll not be able to harvest the corpse. In the same manners, you may have accumulated a tremendous amount of mirrors, but the generation of this moment of intense anger will destroy. So with this, in this regard, regarding this, we'll have a detailed explanation. We'll touch the detailed explanation when we go through this, paragraphs. So this chapter. As we go through this chapter, sorry.
Yeah,
So Rinpoche, I have a question about anger as well. Some people use what you might call righteous anger. It's in response to things like social injustice or wrongs that are being done to people. For example, all the demonstrations when George Floyd was killed a year ago, much of that was an anger that was directed at fixing something. So how does this fit in with the idea of anger destroying virtue?
Yanchi control richik de ampi xianji and the socialia the mawe machambe any chick jawal tenji and counter control such or us. The social member in it, me xianle ya chiki shigurda, any chick did the chick mawe machambe any xianle ya jawang yamba java delia tenji and socialia. 다지 공르기야기 된데다 고급 용으로 봐서 공르기야기 된양가 쇼로 봐서 대답이 공르디에 아니 지금 계속 중요하게 책임 주고라 그래서 배나 단다 예장 가서 될이야 다 미리 단나가서 아메리칸 미나고 세브로 봐 오야 되지 코세브 될 때지 디 당구 말에 제지미 망고지 공르사디로 봐서 디야고 모인네 수차디 거래 디 공르 될 때지 제야고 주만에 내단디 교화티 쓰고 그래 그래서 디 공르디 예 아직 계속 중국으로 bes어요. 대답을 공부에 계속 중국으로 했어요.
다 간제 또 내는 자다면 오늘 예매 지 상선의 댐바다 된적이 계속 힘의 지인소나 선반으로 소화기 나차되다 파쇼기 샤당세디 세 디노로 컨트롤 초화기 저와 세 디노 초화의 컨트롤이 된적이 균을 한비 파쇼될 댐바 이메일 맞대베기 수속의 시주도 추소하는 네바 다라는 거예요. 다 댐바데 댐빙원을 빼나 지 컨트롤의 선발을 초는 나보다 매비토네 니 댐바를 현재 제야 돼 자체제여와 마도 컨트롤 깨는 한바당 비게도 도자 통바다 뒤지기 깨는 하네 계속 댐바이 뭐 가르면 그 가리나요 님이 다라서 그래.
So here now one will face the consequences as long as this is anger, as long as one has generated anger, regardless of what kind of anger, whether you have generated anger towards someone done injustice to others. That doesn't really matter. You know, it will always have the consequences. But if you're able to, you know, do something to someone who has done injustice to someone without generation of anger, if you can compromise that, you know, without generating anger and so forth, then that is a different case. Otherwise, once you have generated anger, anger is always the negative. It actually conjoined with a hatred. And hatred is actually derived from our negative thoughts, such as afflictions and so on.
변화도 가서 시행주기 소환나 이게 배기기 사제들 세마요리 도요리 요리다 아니 결라 다시 가르던 거잖아 소속이 한국 타보지 그런 걸 소화해야 돼 세용이 나기래 등적이 파셔들 대바 예매 빠기 영어도 주저도 창조 여바 강시제라 주저들 아니 샴비기 한국이 소설 건투에게 차제 자제자요.
So we can address someone with a skillful means. But the important part for oneself is to making sure that you have not generated any anger with regard to this person, regardless of whether that person is doing something bad to others or not, or something who is just treating someone unjustly or not. You know, so long as one's own self is concerned, if you really want to interfere and if you want to intervene and bring about a change within the society or among the people, making sure that you have not generated anger, but you do it skillfully. It's just as we have gone through in our past, you know, during our previous teachings by the Bodhisattva's way of life, Guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, as Shantideva stated, that if you see that the entire earth is covered by the thorns or the needles, in other words. But what is the best is that we cannot find any leathers or anything that can actually cover entire surface of the earth. But what is important is to have a very good soul, shoes with a good soul, so that you will protect yourself from being pricked by those, you know, needles and so on.
라바도 가서 전소노기 강해들라. 전소노기 강해들 매마기 차견에서나 강해들 신자 제투에 코너 센터에 제투고 말해. 민치 던질 걸로 바동 지켜져로 배나 가서 배나 먼지기 빠르를 줘도네. 아니 다도바도 줘싱 뭐셔도 라체산을 내가 쟁이들이라도. 가서 배내나 무슨이기 빠르를 줘도소나 니 대칸시싱에 뭐 바바지요네. 야나 금바타서 야나 남아자와 야나 롬바티기 뺑보 the mare just charge us at the Keshedi, Colana Naje, the Tado, the Nasa, Shena, the Tendrick, the Keke. The cookie, then but the Dembinelu and the machine, the Rashi, the touch of the
So there's a way that we can resolve the problem peacefully, but with open-mindedly here. For instance, if one is being a media, the medium of the two parties, try to bring their disagreement, to resolving their disagreements. But the person who is being in the middle should not have any anger towards anyone, any parties, either parties. This person must be always open-minded and with honest motivation and honest attitudes. Otherwise, if you generate angers to either parties, then you will become a partial. So this is not, that is the right way to do it. For instance, in Tibet, there's sometimes, there might be a problems between two families. And then we'll have a person, the medium person, a middle person who actually compromise, bring to resolve the problem, the disagreements between two parties. But this medium should be an open-minded and very honest person.
Tendriki padon chenge tela chi yinchi miji pasho tela ko napo resana ko kontra sagabi ngepa jende yomare ko sama chawala.
When it comes to bringing up resolving the problem, and you have to be very honest, who is right and who is wrong. But when you find that someone is the other party is wrong, that doesn't mean that you generate anger towards that person. This is not going to happen.
Kesi long long nare malo nare chingi jesa dogo wa pe misine ke chambo ngato chen chingi nare si chingi nare chinda timba chi gi lomba chi ma cha wa yeso lomba tela deto jinu yo marwa inchi mi chi chingi jesa dogo ngato jembe long she chingi dese de chingi sing de ni dewa de shwa zo yetera.
It's always good to follow the rules and the law of the country, or law of the state. Whatever we do, if we are not breaking the law, we are good. Just even in the Dharma, it says ethical discipline is something it is a law. It is imposing a law upon us, so we have to follow the law, right?
Nanye kela chingi nyeba kewala ching nyeba keba botela nongu be nyeba mendwa control kena no be nyeba mewa.
Whenever if someone is punishing someone, giving a punishment or someone, with regard to his or her the crime that is committed by the individual, that doesn't mean that who's actually punishing that person, for instance, a judge, has no reason to get any amount of reason to have any anger towards the criminal. But it is a law that judge need to actually punish that person.
The control budget on the show, she does go na tamashore, tell her she doesn't want the tiny chetu marwa.
So it is not really possible by employing anger and bringing about peace in the community is not possible at all. Employing one's anger and hoping for bringing a peace in the community is not possible.
That chin ya jaga ye juba dishene mezoto za tugure. Tegi mala sola nyaka keke yamare jaga nanga ne pilisite segi juba kono ye mezoto za tugure. Good
thing is that in India, regardless of what kind of crime that individual may have committed, but the law enforcement will always go after them, but they will never shoot them, and they will just use they have a very, strong, hard stick. They will always use that, but they will never shoot them. So that's a really good example that everyone should be doing that.
dēla nīnjī gāng tūngi sī kēchē tē tā shāngchū sāmbā tsē tōmbu tā dēndrā kēchē rwa.
So in such situations, in a generation of compassion, when it in such a situation of the turmoil, in a generation of compassion and genuine love, is something that is very important, but it is almost impossible for us as ordinary beings. It can only be done by the bodhisattvas who are on the high levels of realizations, who have gained high levels of realizations.
Nāmbā tā ngā sō, tānda tī zambali jikā sānda jīyā sō na, chīngi tōna chōng gāyā tētā pē hā lī nyā bā, chīngi tōna chōng mā tuwa yīn sō na, nōmbā tī pī chāti pō jīni yōng shīyā kōrō yā mā rō. Kārā sā na ngā sō nyamō tō sō jīngō tī, ngā sō shō tā kō sō shō sē tī, ngā tā ngā yā wā tā, nī nyamō tō sō kī, tā tā kēchā tō chā shē na nyamō tō sō hyōng bā rō.
So following the law of the state, the law of the country is something that is very, very important. Even if it speaks from the secular point of view or the religious point of view, it is very, very important following the law. Not breaking the law is something that is very, very important. Because by breaking the law, if you're breaking the law, you are actually, the very actions of breaking the law is actually derived from your negative thoughts and emotions. And the negative thoughts and emotions, if you keep following the negative thoughts and emotions, and one will become, as mentally unstable person. It's just like a mentally unstable person. Negative thoughts and emotions, such as afflictions, are the source of making an individual unstable person, abnormal, in other words.
Tā tēndrā yu tōna ngā tsū shāngchū kī sāndā hīnjī kī kūna nā tē pāshō tēla nīmī tā tē pēyā tē tā mā tū āyā nā sōsō rāngsū tēmbā chē tū guyā tē kā rāng lā lō nā sōsō rāngsū tēmbā chē tū guyā tē tā sōsō kī tā nyāngyā yā nā mē nā tē rā.
Even though that one may not be able to generate compassion and bodhicitta towards that individual, whoever the individual may be, but the important thing is that you have to turn yourself inward and making sure that you remain, undistracted and not letting yourself to the point that where you are actually engaging in negative deeds of body, speech, and mind in such situation.
Tēlā ngā tsū chūpa tāmbā kī sōngjī tēndrā lā Mene lumba tena meji ki saya megi kange tendo yana matson tela khala saya na matson tela meji ki kange de medro ene yang lumba kono la ji pe de bebe lele jina ya so na la saya mena so yang meji ki tisele dro
mi che ge song de ma de de ya
전소 놀러 la ji ta khala saya megi yo kange shu ji chedo yo yana so na khala saya yana ene 소소라 강에 메로 뺏대잖아 아니 야 소소 현다 코로 농바 코로는데 베베레레 이나야 소소 나를 사이게 찾아내면 야 소소라 강에데 채도 대나기 준소기 돈을 신호 비거라 소소게 란수도 거야.
So here now let me just say that it's very important that we need to be very calm ourselves when something happening, when something turmoil, chaos happening in our surrounding, in our community. But so far as one's own, the individual is concerned, one should always remain calm and not to become a contributory factor of increasing the turmoil. So this is something that is very important. Just like if the community, if we are being a part of the community, and even though that these communities are all impoverished and they're deprived of foods and so on, but so long as if you have yourself at home enough food to eat, so you will have no problems. Then on the other hand, if you do not have any food to eat and you are deprived of food and shelter and so forth, even though that all other surrounding of your community have enough food and shelter, then it is not going to help us, right? So this is how it is.
네. 내가 좀 나로 좀 rangi 강가게 때 냐래 세나래 되게 손하려 그 뺏게 전부래도 맞게 지 쇼로를 가세기 추보야나야 단지나 나기게 이제 ran이라 쉬게 돌로도 그런 거 단지 한 것도 지바로 와 쇼로를 추보 가세야나야 ran이라 아니 추보대 모형이게 차제 한국 단지 제서 시와라게 아니 ran이라 한국 그런 걸 만들어 가가 근데 고아요는 너무 많이 손대야 돼. 진짜 들을 산나도네. 타고 로고잖아. 딱 간저잖아. 네 샴바당. 아니 시와 용도를 간저 제고도. 아니 강가를 돈에 제토야지 렌도 면도. 아니 파쇼게 냐다데 용조 소소게 산나제 당시오나 시나 차는 로고도 로고면도 세대. 아니 신주제네. 아니 샴바땡 게 되러와.
So, the thing is, the point here is now, regardless of what is happening in your surrounding, but remaining very calm, undistracted, one's mind is something that is very, very important, as we mentioned earlier. In fact, one should not be, interrupted in terms of generation of one's own, the development of one's quality of love and compassion towards others. That is very, very important for oneself. Even though that we are being in a community, it is in chaos right now. But so far as one's own state of mind is concerned, should remain always peace and do not try not to lose your peace of mind. And it should be protected by the love, in other words. One's mind, the peace of mind should be protected by the love. Okay, Johnson.
대체 내가 저 감각이다. 가서 감각이 카론로는 가서 감각이 냐네 던지질을 가서 레동고 거 주게 뺏게 쳐버려.
So this
다들 하바도 녀모도 로르도 두르마도 야르도 말이 가서 녀모도서 라라도 아니 녀모도서 가서게 라 선지 쇼방에도 뭐 야르도 해 말어.
This is how we begin to practice as initial practitioners. If we do not pay our attention to our own mind, then our gross level of negative thoughts and emotions, which is already present in us, will develop furthermore, then it will become uncontrollable.
아니서요.
Jocelyn, your question?
Yeah, I'd like to have Rinpoche's thoughts about a situation here. It's a situation I found myself about a year and a half ago where my safety was in question, my physical safety, and I got very angry because it was a recurring situation, and I knew it, and because of the habituation, I did a small gesture of exasperation that had a very negative physical consequence towards myself. I got hurt. So immediately I took it upon myself that it was the anger and that I wasn't successful in stopping the body action. I certainly didn't have any satisfaction in it. And that was a wake-up call to be extremely vigilant with my mind. Is there any, and also I did some purification and that sort of thing. Is there any other advice and thoughts that Rinpoche has about that situation? I would appreciate it.
내가 대충 써야지 세우게 시면도 내가 됐 마데르 총장 되게 아니지 공도 숙심부 세제 한데 공도 뒤 캠베 아니지 링아기 자와딘데 지가 원도 교를 되게 중송스 링아기 자와도 공도기 담베 링아기 자와다 간다 미게 자와딘 세그멘도 안데르 중도 이디가리아 니간다지 그냥 되게 소소리야 지 여부도 소소 연구협대 다가라 제일 마디아 연구협대 소소하고 소스 근데 대제산 다들 가두이네 직배 제 당한조 덴바드 신진 말아보신 되고 디케침을 차셔스 근데 다가나 뭐로 하고 다가라 안 디젤이야 지 상장제야도다 안 될이야 지 지 동점리야도 된대 진짜 미제 동점리야도 된대 제비인데 이내들 좀 최대 관리 안데도 된대기 내다 개지 채버려 신배나 흉만이야 단데 대관리야 지금 믹스에게 고 샤장제야도다 동len제야도 된대 좀 제게 칼로브 된대 게 나요나스
대변량과 정보래 대도 저당 다 여대에서 그러 당가서 내 동보한테 인차디 통만의 기시 제한테 채나 소소 될 컨트롤 농어연날에 가제 능하게 쉬어봐고 도자 통이여 봐 시에요나 코다 장을 되고 세대로 이는 내가 이 가서 찾아보면 이는 내가서 가서 유모 bomba 많이 인산 시기 미전의 통비 전전에 공유 라니라 대 요거 여바데 라니 무슨 시어이나 아니 될라 이미 통비도는 대스 장을 대투에다 이미 따동지래다 가서 카투 샹보다 제 카티자토나다 자자로와 대마토나 대스 장을 되는 요구를 해서 해야 돼.
So we as ordinary practitioners, in other words, the initial practitioners, we will always come across with unpleasant situations that makes us unhappy. It is always. So the best thing for us is to be distance from, one should be distance. One should always keep a distance from that such situations. You know, not letting your body and speech, following the motivation that you have. Don't let your body speech listen to your mind, in other words, the distracted mind. Because it is always good to keep a distance. Just as we find in the Abhidharma where it's stated, it says that Vasubandhu has stated very clearly that for us as ordinary being, it says we have not abandoned the proclivities, and object of attachment are nearby. When our inappropriate meditation is arise with regard to this object, then generation of delusion or the mental affliction, causes and condition of the mental affliction is complete.
안되지. 다들 저단 용 메투기 세가 도바진에 대해 전반되는 대해 되지. 나 이번 등적이 계속 등적이 쟁이 뭐 체내 종 사와이나 그 준투 메자와제. 가서 가서 또지니 뭐 제마다 다시 마로 셰바는 전도도는 도바쇼 소마나 이게 될라 진짜 산나도는 양세야스 디 컨트롤 때 때문도 하잖아. 님이 톰비토네 도투아이나 아니 그 자식이 까도 그래.
Always remain vigilant as a practitioner. Always remain vigilant. It's really, really good. There's one good method of ourselves, protected from those negative thoughts and emotion is the vigilant. And just as we find in the 8 verses of training the mind, which is at the moment that you understand that's the occurrence of negative thoughts and emotions within oneself.
Yeah, right.
One should immediately apply antidotes and avert it. That is one should be doing it,
당 가서기 도쇼 대차로 버려. 배는 대리 가서 집 도와줄라 나중에 집 때나래 지금 말로 쇼샤와이나. 먼저 대러셔야 될 님이 맞다와잖아요. 근데 파쇼 될 러그비 제세산나 다네. 제세산나도 코 님모도 공비원게 로고 인자 다랑 슈체를 젠로. 대부 제가 제 도쇼를 산나도 니가 콜을 텐데 러그야 가래나 건가 러그 아니 제세 계기면 단다지는 대다 다하스 뒤서 초라지만도 대 소소 메시여서로만 제세 제는 민두산에 제세대 야산의 산나도 샤와이나 라시에 시로.
So there's, always, even when one has already expressed some kind of unpleasant word towards someone, again, one should always just try, one should not cling onto it, but rather have a regret and remorse by understanding the negative consequences of the negative actions of the body and speech. And this will reduce, further arousal of those negative actions. It will reduce further. And then with this kind of practice, not only it will reduce, but eventually, in the long run, it will really completely stop from, engaging in such actions in the future. So you should always think about the consequences and think about the disadvantages of engaging in negative deeds of body, speech, and mind, always.
라바도가 소소하게 떠와도 튕라마디도 쇼바 튕라마디 되게 메테사지 해서나 그 년도에 이집인지 계시시는 겐다 조그 말이 때 전세진이요 말아 그 메테바 10이 돈은 그 겐다 조그 개면도 나 이집인지 괜히 빠르를 된다든 첨부 주요비 돈은 계시시는 마시린 시리마도 맞아 먼저와지 된다 추주질의 유매지기 돈은 시토매지기 돈은 겐다 쇼주소 미시베 쇼주소 하고
So we normally engage in insignificant views. In other words, insignificant argument, in other words, I would say, because you do not see each other's, you may have a different standpoint with regard to something, whether it is politics or whether it is religious or whatever, without having a different idea and different standpoints. And by knowing that having a different standpoint, what is the reason for arguing each other? Because you actually know that you do not see eye to eye each other with regard to whatever it is. By knowing that what is the benefit of engaging in any kind of argument, that's not going to resolve your problem, but it will further, become a further development of your problem or problematic situations. It will put you more deeper into the problematic situations.
다 라네 또가 가서 너무 친절라 라니게 랑쟁 원진 투고야다 니 현라 뒤전데 여나 인지민지 전데를 동투 제목 거기 다시 가르 동투 따고야 돼다 다시 야쇼대로.
So it is always, it's once positive conduct of body, speech, and mind should be developed from oneself. And this should influence our own family, within our own family. And even within our family, there's something that might require to be addressed, but you should address so with by skillful means, without charging and pinpointing that person. But you should find a skillful means to deal with that.
남네 아니 되네 진소네 다 최선의 다 제가 지도도 가서 수위제도 말이 근데 된저에 전에 랑쟁 뭐진비도네 멜 가사 단다 사절에서네 젠라다비 미에나 랑라다이 메롱고세 내가 최초로.
So therefore, it is always the positive development should start from oneself. If you want to, develop others, the positive attitude of others, one should always look at oneself and find one's own faults, the flaws that one already possessed, and try to bring about change. And then, to try to influence others through your own experience. As Sakya Pandit had mentioned in one of his writings by saying that, it is in order to say something about looking at others, judging others' face by saying that such and such persons look like this and that, but rather you should have a clear mirror to look your face first into the mirror and then judge other.
그렇지. 근데 컨트롤에 이미 답이토는 소속이 무슨 종크토나 단지 드링데 컨트롤 정세에 대해 깔랬다는 컨트롤 카드. 그래서 종크 맞잖아. 컨트롤 카드 자원 고투고 말아. 종크토고 소소 종크토나 대리 종크는 산이 되지래 그래. 다 대리 종목그 대리 뭘 카드 자산은 손이 소소를 제 강에마도 되지요 말이야.
It is always we should accept defeat when it comes to when it comes to applying antidote towards anger, we should always, accept defeat. Otherwise, if you always have an attitude of not accepting defeat, but you want to defeat others, this will never subdue your anger.
야, 아니. 다음에 내가 마트 슬로건다. 다시 돼.
Thank you.
야, 다음에 내가 마트 슬로건에 치 양천지를 야긴다. 또 저가니 때문에 치 양천지 야기.这给早晚中把了上山了出没过的，老对了，泡泡汤就要把么用来讲，给弄给的的，这到生命确定了，原来汤气就杀了，原来汤气就下在的，先当晚些把那都，准把得到老说给弄的的，实际上女比我把这节制节动呢。세죠 콜론 나라 투비 바나 샤마지니 여바 데니도 게논데 콜로주 제시 동주도 롱쇼반 조로 손도 대바등에 자긴 대바도 로샤르지 치티 사성에 단지테 치티야도 자산이야 좀았어
So here now, it says in general for there to be destruction of the roots of virtue, it is not required that anger be towards bodhisattvas. The compendium of training states, the text of the Arya Sabharstavadins also says, the Bhagavan said, monks, consider a monk who makes a full procession to a stupa that contains the Buddha's hair and nails, who has attitude of faith. So be it revered one. Monks, this monk will experience rings as a universal monarch, 1,000 times the number of grains of sand, 84,000 leagues under the ground. Under the ground, his prostrated body covers down to the disc of golden that supports the earth.
야, 다 같이 대자기 대리 대자. 아니 뭐가 되지? 뒤손은 아니 뭐하데 제도 뒤손 뒤는 뭐하지데 가르쳐서 다다로 찍고 대 커요 좀 제체. 아니 장이 뒤손도 사비 계자다 아니 상제 상추 삼반나지 뒤손도 사비 계자와는 쇼지도 담에 털라 되네. 상추기 생이제 담바존에 제세지 쇼발라 호네 rimbo motoba zobe sanji ko boni wanyo tabo ni ji jana xiaogyi ni xie ni ba yang ni na shu be lama ni sa dan jie ban ji xin jiao lo do su san ne mo da ma jia da.
Let's do our dedications that by combining all the root virtues, the virtue that we have accumulated, and the 3 times of one's own virtue and the virtues of the 3 Buddhas, the Buddhas of the 3 times and Bodhisattvas. By means of combining all the virtues, may myself and all other beings to be able to engage in the practice of the Bodhisattvas and follow the Bodhisattvas' footsteps and engaging in the conduct of the Bodhisattvas. May all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions please bless me to be able to do this.
Dāgī jīnyī sābī gyāvāndi, dēdāng zhōvā gyālā gāmbē dāng, chēbā jīzān lōsāng zhābā yī, dēbī nīmbō rīndō sējī, yō jī sā jī bī jī shū jī mē dō zhōng, re rao ni je nian de jian bo de zang jue jian du mi de pe wa yi zhou gun nong do xin lo shu bo shu jie wo kun du yang da na mo zhe mi qu jun be la long xue ji sa dang lang ji yun de rao zu ne do jue chang ye gong yun do shu ye dong gu zhe面对老光那样大样面，天天人都别来从年，看到阳光光是扫我的，路面马的给动着我弄，拿着家业我不到就急，天马顺便踩到更多样，江边杨家在月节中呢。天边人马跟上浪接住，年年周边接浪年些手，让月节节多边浪接学长在外张月头给去，多月也就明白谢谢你。家园两把有人在着急，两把人钱交给忙交吧。乔家娘把这边晓得呢，你这钱不一让就不一，别的是我写不熟，最近家也没种成来了，列住想出浪就人别讲，他的浪就也浪别的行，家园怎么人都讲究起。老上主编天前主些给见世界门当门面根，赛到更多家园好不赢，浪当这我忙就急，刚才天把秋了去学习，期间住了准把天边菜。土地能就大多主些金，这些将这手要就急，就在那面过菜绕边境，能够成的手指接不能，路上点别正面上送金，这一面些大多年就急。看着照片过，阳光是变暖的我们的中间。现在让我点着叫作业，小别身体不多点就钱，江边八月知道前不。更多人过天阳的现的，别到根据就是道路去。给我的大堂街绕多么，就从西边叫当街去，我刚了出多么不的，大前个月找我的跟讲，从不学习绕多么。哎呀，多谢了，thank you。 呀。
Nirmala.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.
呀 ，good night， 人家呢，
Good
Good
night.
night. Stay safe.
多谢呢，给你们。
那时候跟到什么去？